Hello everyone, welcome to Red Summer Holdings, a real estate partnership comprising of 8 owners, Tochi, myself Zoe, Ramad, Charles, Ikechi, Chima, Innocent, and IK. Here we discuss the evolution of our business, which shows you how group economics can be successful in regards to real estate. If you believe there is value in this information, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. With that being said, let's get to the content you've all been waiting for.
All right, so this is that same spreadsheet I was using for like all the Ohio stuff. And this one highlighted in green is the property that I have under contract now. So you can always feel free to go check it out if you want to at some point in the future. But just to go to the listing itself.
It's under contract now?
Yeah. So they accepted the contract. Yeah.
Cool.
So this is the property. It doesn't look fantastic, but it's I think it's a good deal. So we just scroll through the pictures really quickly. It's 2 units, 3 by 1, so 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, each unit. 1 unit is currently vacant, and the other one is paying $650. I'll discuss that a little more. But this is the photos. So that's the photos of the property. To go through some of the qualitative aspects of it, it's in an area called Old Brooklyn, which is like a suburb of Cleveland, to the southwest of Cleveland. It's relatively old, 1903. It's only been on the market for a little amount of time, but the Cleveland market is pretty hot, similar to the Memphis market, where a good deal is only going to be on the market for like a couple of weeks, at most a month. And I'll go through the area too as well. So these are just a few of the numbers I wanted to show you. Yeah, so it's 3 bedrooms, 1 bath. One is rented at $650 to like a long-term renter. The owners of the property, I tried to look them up as much as I could. They've owned it for a long amount of time, and they bought it. Actually, we can see here, 1997 is when they bought it for $63,000. So just doing some of like the mental math on it, chances are they've probably paid off the whole note on the property. They own it outright or something like that, and they don't care to go through the process of raising rents or anything like that, which is why the rents are at $650 right now for one unit. The other one's vacant. If you own something outright, you're making money regardless of whether you raise rents or not. So an older couple, I think they're in their 60s. Anyway, taking it back to the spreadsheet to go through the numbers. Again, built in 1903. It's in what's considered a B area of Cleveland. We can go through. I like to use this guide that was put on Bigger Pockets by a property manager and an agent in Cleveland, because they rank the areas. I mean, it's always relative, but it gives you an idea from thousands of miles away what sort of place you're looking at or area you're looking at. And so it's by zip code, and this one is 44144. So just a quick Control F, 144. And so it's in this B grouping according to this person. And we'll discuss this a little more when I talk about the process. I spoke to the agent, and she didn't necessarily agree with grading quote unquote zip codes, but at the same time, she would tell me, okay, this is a good area, this is an okay area, this is a up and coming area, yada yada yada, and it would be pretty much aligned with this rating here. So even though she didn't necessarily agree with it, she sort of backed it up with what she said. And so yeah, this is supposed to be a decent area, a B area that's up and coming, and we can go through the map real quick to show you where it's at. But I mean, just to go back on that, I think that having that analysis that's already posted online, has been there for a while, and then talking to somebody that's active in the market, works basically with investors, is a nice sort of mix of opinions that can give you some guidance when you're not close by. So using services like, well, not services, but like forums like Bigger Pockets, and then afterwards speaking to someone can really give you some confidence in an area and give you an idea of the stronger submarkets and what places are up and coming and what you should probably avoid. So taking it to the map, I can zoom out a little bit here. Oh, that's a lot actually. So, Jesus, okay, let's start over. So it's near a high school, and this is a cemetery here. Scroll out just a bit. This is like a main thoroughfare with a lot of shops, right? And down here, and this is what gave me some confidence about the area in general. There's a supermarket right here, but right here in this area, there's Lowe's, Ross, Dress for Less, a Best Buy. There's a Starbucks in this area. So a lot of national companies that I am familiar with, and a Walmart right here. So, I mean, it has all the makings, Sam's Club, all the makings of, working class area, somewhere where people, just maybe live check to check or month to month, but it's not a bad area because there are shops that are operating there. And for these, large national brands to have a presence in the area means that there's an economy to be serviced. So just looking at it from that perspective, and you got the Cleveland Zoo there. Um, it seems like a strong area to invest in. And something I spoke to with the property manager I'm going to be using is that in Cleveland, the closer you are to downtown is the closer to is when you're close to more of the high crime areas and places that aren't as favorable. But when you're in an area like Lakewood, which is nice, obviously on the lake, or you get out to the general suburbs, like I know this Garfield Heights area is really nice. Shaker Heights is an up and coming area. You see a Target there. That's always good news. And as long as you stay away from East Cleveland, which is also a bad area, then you should be fine. And another quote unquote check is that the property manager I use, he only works in these suburban areas. So the fact that he's considering even managing the place on my behalf shows that it's not in a place that he wouldn't want to manage. Therefore, it's in a decent neighborhood. The last thing on the actual property itself, I just wanted to roll through the specific area. It's like at the end of a street. So that's the real-time photo from 2 years ago, June, what, year and a half maybe. And so this is the general area here. And like I said, it's at the end of a street. And one thing I noticed right off the bat that I like is that there isn't like fencing around people's houses. So people aren't worried about other neighbors coming on their property and damaging their stuff or stealing from them or anything like that. It's most likely a very neighborly area where, people keep their lawns, some single family homes as opposed to all duplexes. And generally, of single family, people tend to take care of their property more because they own it themselves. So all positive things when it comes to area, and why I ultimately decided to pull the trigger. So to go back to the spreadsheet and go through the numbers, it's listed at $117,000. And by the way, I went in for list price, just give them what they wanted because the market's relatively hot, and I don't want to get into a situation where I bid, a few $1,000s less and ultimately lost the property to somebody that went in at list. So I just went in at list. And the lender I'm working with let me know that they have a package where you can put 20% down. So that's what I plan on doing, if possible. So with that being the case, 20% down would be 23.4. And then, I mean, if you add closing costs, the realtor I'm working with, because these are lower price point properties, she makes it in such a way that the minimum you can pay her is $3,000. And then, so it's basically the larger out of 3% of the property's value, or $3,000 basically. And ultimately, I'm not even paying it, the seller pays it. So it doesn't make much of a difference to me, but that's just how it works for her because she sells, these properties are anywhere from, $60,000 to $150,000. That's her sweet spot. But there will be other closing costs. I'm assuming, for the loan itself, appraisal, the inspection is going to cost me $450. So, 23.4 is, yes, 20% of the list, but I'd probably think that I'll end up paying 26 to be out the door. And that puts the loan amount at 93.6. And I'm underwriting $10,000 a unit CapEx right off the bat because I just generally want to be conservative. and B, it's an older property, 1903. Chances are, especially with somebody that's owned it since 1997, there's some deferred maintenance that will need to be addressed. Maybe not day one, but most likely in the first couple of years. So I just put $10,000 a unit, $20,000 total for estimated down payment. Sorry, for capex. Puts the price per unit at just under 60K. Again, it was on the market for 18 days. 2 units, 3x1, like I said before. So I put 1600 here to show maybe 800 a unit as the ultimate rent or per door. But the property manager I spoke to said that in that area, 3x1s usually go for 950 a door per month. And he, by the way, manages 2,000 units in the general area. So I imagine he has a pretty good idea of what he'd be able to get as, the property manager. But I put 1,600 just to be conservative again. It's just so no surprises. That puts yearly income at 18,000 with a vacancy rate of 6%. The property tax, I pulled that straight from Redfin, and it's extremely high. That's just how it is in the suburbs of Cleveland, and that's why ultimately the prices of the property are lower, is because the taxes are like 2-3% of the the value that they have from the city or the state or whatever. So that's that. I pulled the estimated insurance also from Redfin. Repairs and maintenance, that's just 6% of the revenue, which comes out to 1,082. Property management, this actually isn't 6%. This is from, and I can actually show you guys. This is directly from the guy that I'm going to be using. It's smaller. That's just his fee for duplexes. So $115 a month for a duplex comes out to $1,380 for the year. It's on the expensive side, but quite frankly, I mean, in real estate, especially in long distance real estate, the property manager is, your eyes and ears on the ground. And I'd rather not nickel and dime in that part of the business and pay a premium for good service than to deal with somebody that's not going to give me the best rents, not going to turn my units, in a timely manner, and basically going to do a job that lower price point would generally give you. So I'm fine with paying a little more. And I think at the end of the day, the value I'll get for that is going to be, much more than what I'm paying, $1,300. That said, NOI comes out to 12.3. The mortgage on an annual basis, if I were to get a 6% loan, PI with principal and interest being paid, would come out to just under 6,800, which would put my cash flow or retained earnings at 5,500 there, which comes out to 232 per door per month, and gives me a cap rate, again, with the assumption that each one is rented at $800 of 10.5, and then levered return. So with a mortgage, that comes out to just under 24%. And if I actually do need to spend that $20,000 up front, it comes out to just under 13% on an annual basis, cash on cash. Any questions before we move to the actual process?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it contingent right now? So you said you're getting ready to close or whatnot. Is it contingent on the inspection?
I started like a couple days ago. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, but do you plan to make it contingent on whether the house is solid or not?
Oh, yeah. So
in regards to closing?
Yeah. So in my offer, there's a finance contingency. So obviously I need to get a loan to close. Inspection contingency. So, after the inspector goes through and we get an understanding of what's wrong with the property, for lack of better words, I have the option to, walk away and get my earnest money back. And also a contingency on them delivering me, the documents that are necessary for me to underwrite the property, like the leases, trailing 12 months, CapEx, operating expenses, the whole nine. So all the contingencies are in place. Yeah.
Dope. And for those people watching or listening that don't understand what a contingency is, it just basically means that the seller and buyer cannot close on the deal in regards to financing. If financing isn't proper between the buyer and the seller, if the house isn't proper between the buyer or the seller, and so on and so forth. Cool. Good job, IK.
Thanks. I think I heard somebody else too.
Yeah. Hey, what's up, man?
What's up, man?
So I had two questions. Are you financing this? Are you going to own property in an LLC or just as yourself? And then did you look into like kind of the pros and cons for that in that particular market?
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked because that's something I wanted to go over actually. So with the lender that I'm using is a national lender, and it's quasi commercial lending. So it's not like, going to Chase and getting a 30-year mortgage using your debt to income and, the normal way of buying property. This guy, he's actually the guy I used to refinance my property recently in Phoenix, where he's doing it as if it's a large commercial building, but for smaller buildings. And one of the requirements is actually to own the property in an LLC. And in order to get the property or to get the proof of funds, which we'll discuss in the next part when we go over the process, the proof of funds to get the property under contract, because in the Cleveland area, if you don't have proof of funds or pre-qualification letter, no one's going to take you seriously. So in order to get that letter, I had to use the LLC that I used to buy the property in Phoenix. But I asked them if during the contract period, so over the course of the next 30 days, I form a new LLC specifically for this property, will I be able to close in that LLC? He was like, sure, as long as, the seller and your agent are fine with that and the title company's fine with that. I don't see any problem with it. But to answer your question, I do plan on closing in an LLC. The only thing I'm still trying to decipher is whether I want to use my current LLC that I already have or form a new one. And the pros and cons, I guess I would say, are pros. It separates the liability of my personal stuff from like my W-2 income and all that stuff, B, my property in Phoenix, and then ultimately the property in Cleveland. So worst case scenario, like a contractor gets hurt working on my property in Cleveland and sues me for $1 million. Well, the lawsuit only goes as far as the LLC owns the property. So I say that to say that the only thing that's at risk is the property within that LLC that he's quote unquote suing, because he's not suing me, he's suing a company.
Right.
And same for the property in Phoenix, or my personal. Say I hit somebody with a car, and I have to pay all the medical bills, but I can't afford to. They can't take my property and pay it off on my behalf. So that's the reason, or the pro of having each property as well as my personal assets in separate entities. The con, and it's only a con to the point where it doesn't underwrite well, is that now I'm going to have to, when I file taxes, deal with 3 separate entities that I'm filing taxes for. I have to keep up with the regulatory requirements of 3 separate entities, being the 2 properties and myself and LLCs. And I mean, there are some incremental expenses to it, but and this is obviously up to each operator to choose on their own, but I think the pros outweigh the cons. So I do, and for the sake of my loan, I'm going to have to own it under an LLC. The only decision I'm going to have to make is whether I want to own them in the same LLC or 2 separate LLCs.
Gotcha.
And then you could also write those expenses off, So.
Yeah, so that's why I say like it's only a con if like it doesn't pencil out, because all those costs are going to be, like you said, write-offs, like the forming of the LLC, any sort of regulatory costs. Those are business expenses, so I can write them off. But if say an LLC required $10,000 to start in costs, then it wouldn't necessarily make sense, even if I could write it off, because I wouldn't have revenue to write it off against. So as long as you can underwrite it just the way you underwrite operating expenses or insurance into the business, which is effectively a property, as long as it pencils out, I don't see the reason why not to do it.
Gotcha. And then, so the other thing I wanted to ask about, you mentioned that, the lender is kind of underwriting it as if it was a commercial property.
Sure.
I think I know a little bit about that, but I think it might be helpful to talk through. They probably look at like your debt service coverage ratio and things like that, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think you have that broken out, but that might be kind of helpful.
Well, I don't have it broken out in detail where I can show you the numbers, but I can just talk through it because I actually did go through the process of using or of trying to use a local lender
Mhm.
called Cleveland Mortgage in the area that is highly recommended. And the lady I spoke to was she was fantastic. She was a great person to work with, and I wanted to work with her, but under the regulations that they have right now for the normal mortgage that you would use to go buy like a condo or a property you're going to live in, my DTI didn't pencil out for them, so they wouldn't have been able to offer me the loan.
Right.
Whereas working with Helios Capital, which is the guy I'm working with now, he doesn't necessarily look at your personal debt to income or even like your tax returns or any of the stuff that they would look at for a conventional mortgage. He looks at um, the revenue you'll receive from the property, either being the actual or pro forma revenue you receive from the property, and then matches that against the cost of the debt. And then if it covers it to a good enough ratio that his investor would be comfortable with, that's one check in the box. And then he looks at your reserves. Do you have 6 months worth of reserves of the principal and interest on the property? If you do, and you have enough cash to stomach any any wavering period during the ownership of the property, then he's good with that. And that's basically all. And also that you've formed a company to own it in, because again, it's a commercial loan. But once you've checked those boxes, then you're pretty much good to go for him to work with you. And if you also already own property, that's even more of a plus, because they are looking for operators that have had some measure of success in recent history.
Yep. Yeah. So that was like a key thing, right? Like that piece where, especially as we're growing as business people and entrepreneurs, right? Like your taxable income that you might report on your taxes might be a little bit different than the money that you have available. And even those debt to income ratios, they make certain assumptions about your spending habits, right? That you can only support 50% of your income on assets. But like some people live more frugal than others. Some people live more lavish than others, right? And kind of when you're entering the world of like going after commercial loans, they don't care about your personal habits. Everything is based on the asset, right? Like how much is the asset going to bring in versus how much are we going to loan you to cover it? And if, and that debt service coverage ratio that I was talking about, and that you described, I've seen it, like you said, every investor has their own like tolerance, but I've seen it have to be at least 1.1 for some lenders, but some prefer it at like, 1.2, meaning, they want to make sure that you're bringing in $1,200 a month in revenue against a loan that's $1,000 a month, right? Just for ease of numbers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like you said, every investor is a little bit different, but the benefit of that, right, is that like a couple things, they don't particularly care where your down payment comes from, right? So they care about the note that you're paying versus the asset that's generating the revenue, because it's all about risk, and it's really important to understand why they're working with you, just so you can kind of work backwards to like find situations that'll work. Even if your personal income or your personal finances aren't ideal, you can manufacture deals yourself, understanding what a lender wants, right? At the end of the day, not saying that anything would go bad, but if God forbid something went wrong, the lender wants to know that if they're taking risk in lending you this money against this asset. If God forbid something went wrong, they'd be covered because the asset will still be able to take care of itself. So that's why that debt service coverage ratio is so important to them when you're going after commercial loans. Even though this is like a duplex, the fact that you found a national lender that'll underwrite it like a commercial loan was pretty key. Like you said, with that Cleveland mortgage company, the deal might not have been possible, right? Based on, your personal, just, your personal stats, right? You might have, car payment and other things that are getting in the way. in air quotes, but commercial lending doesn't care about your personal expenses and liabilities.
And similar to what we were talking about before with pros and cons, there are pros and cons to conventional mortgage versus a commercial, where more often than not that conventional mortgage is going to cost you substantially less. You're going to have a lower rate, and you're going to be able to keep a little more money in your pocket. But with the commercial, it costs you less in time and the work needed to actually obtain the loan. So those are pros and cons of, I guess, the financing side. And one thing I'd like to add to what Chuck said, to sort of just put a bow on that, like with a conventional loan, they're basically underwriting you as the person. They're underwriting your finances, your personal, like Chuck said, your personal finances. So they're underwriting what you are. And for the commercial, and they're underwriting the property with the expectation that the property is what's going to be funding the debt service, as opposed to in a personal loan. Because usually, conventional loan, usually it's for your family home, or your condo. They're expecting you to be paying for it, as opposed to the property paying for it.